Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a soothing journey into the world of ancient Egypt, but with a twist. Imagine yourself, for a moment, in the golden sands of a sprawling desert, just outside the massive pyramids. The sun is low, casting a soft glow across the landscape. Now picture this. You're about to encounter a creature that the ancient Egyptians revered more than you could ever imagine. A cat. But not just any cat. Those furry little beings were seen as sacred, powerful, and, believe it or not, capable of calming the chaos of a royal palace. Well, you've probably never considered the humble cat as a regal companion, but back then, these creatures were more than just pets. They were divine. Oh, and before you get too cozy with your thoughts of ancient Egyptian luxuries, I'll let you in on a secret. You probably wouldn't have survived a day in this world without the right protection, and that protection just might have been a cat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see where everyone's tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ancient Egyptians, with their towering monuments and intricate hieroglyphs, had an almost mystical connection with their cats. To them, these small, sleek creatures weren't just clever hunters or companions. They were powerful, revered protectors, often associated with the divine. Cats were believed to have the ability to safeguard the home, protect families, and even shield royalty from evil spirits. It was so serious that some pharaohs even took their relationship with cats to the next level. These animals were not merely household pets, but spiritual partners, so deeply woven into the fabric of Egyptian culture. Cats' sacred status in ancient Egypt goes far beyond the typical role of a pet. In fact, they were the beloved companions of the pharaohs themselves. It's believed that the divine connection between cats and the Egyptian rulers began with the powerful belief in the protection and vigilance these creatures provided. The pharaoh, as the supreme ruler, needed all the protection he could get, and a cat's presence was thought to bring both physical and spiritual defense. And it wasn't just any cat, no, it was a specially selected feline, chosen to accompany the pharaoh and his court. As you drift deeper into this ancient world, imagine walking through a grand palace, the air heavy with the smell of incense, and the sound of delicate footsteps on the cool stone floors. You might expect to see the pharaoh seated on his throne, adorned in gold and jewels, but look again. There, nestled beside him, perhaps even curled comfortably in his lap, is a cat. Yes, the same creature that today is more likely to be found lounging lazily on a windowsill, enjoying a nap. But back then, cats were symbols of something far greater. Their sleek fur and tranquil demeanor were a direct reflection of the calm and power that the pharaoh exuded. And it was this connection that made them not just pets, but sacred beings. It's easy to think of cats as lazy creatures who sleep for hours, but in ancient Egypt, their calm presence was seen as more than just restful. Cats had a vital role as protectors. Their ability to hunt pests, especially rodents, meant they kept not only the royal kitchen safe from vermin, but also ensured that the pharaoh's space was free from any unwanted distractions. But it wasn't just about catching mice or birds. Cats were also believed to have an almost mystical power to ward off evil spirits and dark forces. They were revered as guardians who could protect the pharaoh from unseen dangers, everything from curses to intruders, ensuring that the ruler's reign remained stable and unharmed. Beyond their roles as physical guardians, cats held a place in the spiritual life of Egypt. Their presence was tied to the gods, especially Bastet, the goddess who took the form of a lioness or domestic cat. Bastet was the goddess of home, fertility, and protection, and she was said to watch over the pharaohs and their households, ensuring peace and harmony. This divine connection elevated cats to an almost godlike status. They were seen as manifestations of Bastet's power and grace, and their protection of the pharaoh wasn't just a matter of loyalty. It was part of their sacred duty. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians' belief in the divine nature of cats was rooted in genuine religious faith, or whether it was simply a way to justify their deep affection for the animals. Some believe it was more about the practical aspects of the cat's role in society. After all, they did serve as excellent pest controllers. But the idea that these cats were vessels of divine power is undeniable. Whether or not the pharaohs themselves truly believed their cats were directly favored by the gods is hard to say, but the evidence suggests that their presence was considered essential for both earthly and spiritual protection. As you imagine the royal court, think of the reverence with which the cats were treated. They weren't just roaming the halls as pets, they were honored guests in the royal space. Imagine a cat being handed its own meal, perhaps fish or some luxurious delicacy, as a token of respect. To be in the presence of a pharaoh meant to acknowledge the divine nature of the animals that shared the throne room. Cats were more than companions. They were symbols of the balance between power and protection, between life and death. Their calm demeanor reflected the steady, unshakable authority of the ruler, a reminder that true power wasn't always about force. It was about grace and quiet strength. Now, as you picture this regal cat lounging in the shadows of the throne room, it's easy to see why the ancient Egyptians would go to great lengths to ensure their cats had the best of everything. It wasn't just about making sure the pharaoh's lap was comfortable. It was about the profound belief that these animals carried divine favor. Now, as you ease further into this journey, imagine stepping into one of the grand temples dedicated to Bastet. The air is thick with the scent of incense, and the walls are adorned with intricate hieroglyphs, telling stories of gods and kings, and yes, of cats. Cats were so sacred in ancient Egypt that entire temples were built in their honor. The most famous of these was in Bubastis, a city in the Nile Delta, where a massive temple complex dedicated to Bastet stood. This temple was not only a place of worship, but also a sanctuary for the cats that were believed to carry the goddess's blessing. People from all over Egypt, and even beyond, would travel to this temple to pay homage to Bastet. It wasn't just the pharaohs who sought out the protection and favor of cats. Everyday people understood the power of these creatures too. At Bubastis, the cats weren't merely housed, they were honored as divine beings. They roamed freely within the temple grounds, often resting beside altars or curling up in shaded corners. And just like the pharaoh's cats, these temple cats were fed and cared for in the most luxurious fashion. The temple's priests and priestesses ensured that the cats had everything they needed, including special rituals to protect them and ensure their well-being. The reverence for cats extended to elaborate ceremonies. Historians speculate that during religious festivals, cats were dressed in fine garb and taken to the temple for blessings, much like revered idols or statues. These ceremonies were grand affairs, filled with music, incense, and offerings, as Egyptians sought to ensure that Bastet's protection would continue to watch over their homes and families. The cats, often seen as intermediaries between the human and divine worlds, were believed to have the power to bring peace, fertility, and even success in battle to those who honored them. But it wasn't just the ceremonial aspect of these rituals that was fascinating. It was the social and economic significance. Temples dedicated to Bastet weren't just places of worship, they were also powerful centers of influence. The cats within these temples were not only spiritual symbols, but also economic assets. Pilgrims would bring offerings to the temple, often in the form of food, goods, and precious materials, which helped to fund the temple's activities. In a way, the cats were part of a system that connected religion, economics, and daily life in ancient Egypt. Historians still debate the extent to which these cats were worshipped, or whether they were simply revered as protectors of the household, but there's no question that the ancient Egyptians saw them as more than just animals. Cats were integral to the social, spiritual, and political fabric of the civilization. They were symbols of everything that was good and pure, from the protection of the home to the favor of the gods. As you imagine the bustling temple grounds, filled with the scent of incense and the soft sound of paws padding along the stone floors, it becomes clear that these cats were far more than mere companions. They were divine ambassadors, carrying with them the power and protection of Bastet, guiding the people of Egypt through their daily lives. Picture yourself now walking along the Nile River, the ancient heart of Egypt. The heat of the day is softened by a gentle breeze, and the sounds of the river's current mingle with the calls of distant birds. On the banks of this powerful waterway, the pharaoh's entourage has gathered. Among the royal court, you might notice something unusual. The pharaoh's trusted companions, not just his closest advisors, but the animals that were considered to be part of the royal guard. And there, perched like a silent sentinel by the pharaoh's side, is a cat. Its eyes gleam in the sunlight as it surveys the surroundings, ever vigilant. Cats were, after all, more than just a symbol of protection for the pharaoh. They were literal protectors. These royal cats weren't merely there for companionship, they were integral to the pharaoh's security. In ancient Egypt, a pharaoh's power wasn't just a matter of strength, it was about maintaining order and warding off chaos, both internal and external. Cats played a surprisingly significant role in this mission. Imagine this: the pharaoh's royal palace, where luxury and danger both lurked behind the golden walls, was never without the presence of a cat. Cats weren't just revered as creatures of comfort and status, they were also invaluable in maintaining order. Their sharp instincts and formidable presence made them ideal for guarding the palace and its treasures. But their protective role extended beyond just guarding the royal court. Cats also accompanied the pharaoh's armies into battle. That's right, these sacred creatures weren't limited to the palace or temple. They were part of Egypt's military strategy, helping to secure camps and control supplies. The presence of a cat was believed to protect not only the pharaoh, but also the troops. Cats, with their fierce hunting abilities, were trusted to keep the soldiers safe from rats, insects, and even more dangerous pests that might spread disease or cause chaos within the ranks. And beyond their physical roles, cats were thought to protect the troops in a spiritual sense. Their presence was believed to ward off bad luck, evil spirits, and ill omens. Now, you might be thinking, how exactly did a small, sleek cat become a tool of war? Well, that's where the ancient Egyptians' deep connection to these creatures comes in. The Egyptians viewed cats as more than just animals. They were guardians of the divine order. Their calm and silent observation, their ability to keep alert and hunt efficiently, was seen as an extension of the pharaoh's own vigilance. The pharaoh's power wasn't only reflected in the grand architecture or the armies it commanded, it was also reflected in the quiet presence of a cat, guarding the royal household and the kingdom itself. Some scholars suggest that the idea of cats in the military may have evolved over time, as Egypt's strategic importance grew and the pharaoh's role expanded. Others argue that the tradition of cats in battle was rooted in the belief that they held a special connection to the gods. If the pharaoh was seen as a god on earth, then his animal companions, especially the cat, were seen as divine agents too. Historians still argue over whether cats were truly enlisted for military purposes, or whether their symbolic role as protectors was just as important in battle. Either way, cats were an undeniable part of Egypt's grand narrative, both in times of peace and in times of war. As you imagine this royal scene, where cats move with purpose through the opulent halls of the pharaoh's palace and alongside soldiers in the heat of battle, it's clear that these animals were much more than mere pets. They were symbols of Egypt's power, divine protection, and military strategy. And this reverence for cats only deepened as their status continued to grow. As you settle deeper into this tale, let's imagine for a moment the end of a long, hard day. The pharaoh is back in his royal quarters, the evening's coolness slowly replacing the scorching heat of the sun. His trusted advisors have all retired, and the palace is bathed in a dim, soft light. But there's still a presence in the room. Sitting quietly by the pharaoh's side, its eyes glimmering in the candlelight, is the pharaoh's cat. It's not just for show. The cat, while calm and seemingly docile, was always at attention, ever alert to any sign of danger. Its keen senses were as much a part of the royal guard as the soldiers who stood at the gates. But it's in these quiet moments, when the palace is peaceful, that the cat's true role becomes most evident. It's said that these cats were not just guardians of the body, but guardians of the spirit as well. Ancient Egyptians believed that the world was teeming with spiritual forces, both good and bad. The gods, with all their power, were invisible, and so too were the forces that could potentially harm or disturb the balance of the universe. It was here that cats, with their nearly mythical connection to Bastet, played an even more important role. Cats were considered to be intermediaries between the human world and the divine, capable of sensing and repelling malevolent spirits. If we step back into the past for a moment, we find that the ancient Egyptians held a deep belief that the world was not just physical, but also spiritual. This view shaped much of their daily life, from the rituals they performed to the way they arranged their homes. Cats were placed at the center of this spiritual worldview. It wasn't uncommon for households to place a cat by the hearth or near sacred objects, where its mere presence was thought to keep evil at bay. The Egyptians believed that, just as cats protected the physical spaces from pests and threats, they also helped keep the spirit world in balance. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians truly saw cats as spiritual beings, or if the reverence for them was simply a reflection of their role as practical guardians of the home. Perhaps it was a combination of both. Cats were undoubtedly seen as protectors in the most physical sense, but there was also a deeply spiritual aspect to their presence. The idea that a simple household cat could bridge the gap between the human world and the divine is one of those fascinating contradictions that make the ancient Egyptian worldview so rich and enigmatic. But this wasn't only the domain of the pharaoh. In fact, the influence of cats stretched far beyond the royal court and the temples. Ordinary Egyptians, from farmers to merchants, also saw their cats as sacred protectors, guarding both the physical and spiritual well-being of their homes. The Egyptians believed that even the humblest of cats could ward off evil, protect the family from misfortune, and ensure that their crops grew healthy. This wasn't just superstition. It was part of the fabric of everyday life, woven into every corner of Egyptian society. Picture yourself back in an Egyptian home now, where a cat is curled up on the windowsill, silently watching over its family as the moonlight filters through the cracks in the walls. Its eyes scan the room, and though it doesn't move, it's ready to act at any moment. In the quiet stillness of the night, the cat isn't just guarding against intruders, it's protecting the home from forces that cannot be seen, ensuring the safety of its owners on a spiritual level. This was the real power of the Egyptian cat. Not only did it offer its protection in the physical world, but it also shielded the home from the unseen forces of darkness. As the evening deepens and the night sky stretches above, we continue our journey into the realm of Egyptian cats. By now, you might have noticed a strange pattern emerging in our story, one that blends reverence, protection, and mystery. You've probably even begun to understand how important cats were to the Egyptians, but there's another fascinating twist to this tale that we haven't yet explored: the mysterious way that cats became symbols of life, death, and rebirth in Egyptian culture. It wasn't just about keeping away evil spirits or guarding the pharaoh. Cats were also tied to some of the most profound aspects of Egyptian religion, particularly the cycle of life and death. Let's look at how this connection to the afterlife was woven into the symbolism of the cat. Ancient Egyptians had a deep belief in the afterlife, a place where souls went after death to be judged by the gods. The idea of this journey to the afterlife was central to their worldview, and it shaped many of their religious practices. Cats, with their quiet grace and mystical allure, were believed to have a special connection to this spiritual realm. It wasn't just their fierce hunting abilities or their role as guardians that made them sacred. It was also their elusive nature, their ability to slip in and out of spaces unseen. Cats were thought to have a foot in both worlds, straddling the line between life and death, the mortal and the divine. Now, you might be wondering, how could such an everyday animal be so tied to something as profound as the afterlife? Well, in Egyptian mythology, many gods and goddesses were associated with animals that had powerful symbolism. Bastet, the cat goddess, was not only the protector of the home, but also the goddess of music, dance, and joy, all of which were seen as essential for a peaceful transition to the afterlife. Cats, as her earthly representatives, were believed to carry her blessings and her divine protection into the realm of the dead. But it wasn't just Bastet's association with life and death that made the cats so significant. When Egyptians mummified their loved ones, they often included cats in their tombs, or placed small statues of cats alongside the deceased. This act wasn't simply a gesture of love for a beloved pet. It was a belief that the cat would continue to watch over the deceased in the afterlife. Cats, being intermediaries between the worlds, were seen as guides for the soul on its journey to the next life. They were thought to help protect the deceased from harmful forces and to ensure a safe passage into the realm of the gods. This belief in the spiritual role of cats extended to the process of mummification itself. When a cat died, it was often mummified and buried with great care, just like a human being. Sometimes entire cemeteries of mummified cats were found, especially near temples dedicated to Bastet, where it was believed that the goddess's blessings could reach both the living and the dead. Some of these cat cemeteries have yielded thousands of mummified cats, indicating just how widespread and deeply ingrained the reverence for these creatures was in ancient Egyptian society. Historians still argue over the reasons behind the widespread mummification of cats, whether it was solely for spiritual reasons, or if it was also a form of offering to the gods. in the hope of receiving blessings in return. As you imagine these sacred tombs, where mummified cats rest beside their human counterparts, you can see how profoundly the Egyptians connected the cat to the mysteries of life and death. The cat, once a symbol of divine protection, now serves as a guide for the departed, ensuring that their journey through the afterlife would be as safe and blessed as their time on earth. And while you might think of cats as ordinary companions in your daily life, these ancient Egyptians saw them as far more than that. They were creatures that bridged the gap between worlds, helping to preserve the balance of life and death. Now, let's step away from the tombs and sacred practices for a moment and shift our focus to something equally fascinating: the social and political implications of these sacred cats. As you wander through the bustling streets of ancient Egypt, imagine the many layers of society unfolding before you. You can almost hear the rhythmic sounds of craftsmen chiseling away at stone, the chatter of market traders haggling over wares, and the distant hum of the Nile. But amid this vibrancy, there's another layer to the social fabric that you might not expect. The cat, with its divine status, also played an interesting role in the power dynamics of Egyptian society. The reverence for cats was not just about protecting the pharaoh or the home. It also had implications for law, order, and authority. Let's start with one of the most curious aspects of Egyptian cat reverence: the law. Cats were so highly regarded that harming or killing one, even accidentally, could be a serious crime. Imagine the fear of a criminal who accidentally struck a cat while walking through the bustling streets of a town. The punishment for such an act could be harsh, possibly even death. This might seem extreme, but to the Egyptians, the cat wasn't just an animal. It was a divine creature, a protector of the pharaoh, and a symbol of cosmic order. Killing a cat wasn't just a crime against an individual, it was a transgression against the gods themselves. Historians still debate the exact punishments for killing a cat. Some suggest that the severity of the crime was reflective of the cat's deep connection to the goddess Bastet. Others argue that the law was more of a symbolic gesture to reinforce the importance of the cats in society, emphasizing the sacredness of life and the need to preserve the balance between humans and the divine. What is clear, however, is that the presence of cats in Egyptian society was more than just a matter of tradition. It was also a matter of law, order, and respect for the divine forces that governed their world. But let's not be fooled into thinking that this reverence for cats was exclusive to the upper echelons of society. No, the love for cats was felt by Egyptians across all classes, from the pharaoh's royal court to the common farmer's humble abode. Cats, in fact, were not only the protectors of the upper class, but also companions for everyday people. They were particularly popular with the lower classes, who valued them for their ability to keep pests away and safeguard food supplies. In a society where food security was always a concern, a cat could be as valuable as a trusted servant, quietly ensuring that no vermin would ruin the harvest or spoil the grain. What's even more intriguing is how the social role of the cat expanded beyond Egypt's borders. Egypt, after all, was a powerful empire that had extensive trade and diplomatic relations with surrounding regions. Cats, once sacred protectors of Egyptian homes, began to make their way across the ancient world, hitching rides on merchant ships and finding homes in distant lands. By the time of the Roman Empire, cats were spreading throughout the Mediterranean, finding new roles in households across the Roman Empire, and gaining popularity as symbols of good fortune and protection. But in Egypt, no matter where the cat went, it remained an object of reverence. Egyptian kings and queens would send cats as gifts to other rulers, solidifying their status as symbols of protection, fertility, and divine favor. To receive a cat from the pharaoh was seen as a blessing, a sign of divine favor, and a recognition of the recipient's own importance. It's fascinating to think of how these regal creatures, with their quiet strength and mystical presence, became international symbols of Egyptian power and influence. And so, as we walk back through the streets of Egypt, you can see that the cat was far more than just an animal in this ancient society. It was a symbol of divine order, a keeper of balance, and a creature that could sway the course of law, diplomacy, and social life. Cats were present in nearly every aspect of Egyptian society, not just as pets, but as powerful symbols of the connection between the earthly realm and the divine. And all of this power, all of this reverence, stemmed from one simple, graceful creature. As we move deeper into the rich tapestry of ancient Egyptian life, let's take a moment to reflect on the way cats were integrated into the daily rituals and cultural practices. Imagine the calm before dawn, with the faintest glow of the sun creeping over the Nile, its golden light creeping into the homes of ordinary Egyptians. In the quiet of the morning, as people begin their daily routines, their cats are with them, seemingly unaware of their divine status, but playing a role in the spiritual harmony of the day. These cats, once seen only as symbols of divine power, were now woven into the very fabric of life itself. In this section, we're going to explore how cats were not just revered in the grand temples or in royal palaces, but how they became fixtures in the everyday homes of Egyptians. They were, in a sense, companions in the most sacred and personal sense. Much like any cherished pet today, these cats were part of the family, but they also carried a weighty responsibility in these households. Cats, as you might recall, weren't just protecting the home from pests. They were also believed to act as guardians of the heart and soul. Their presence was a reminder of the cosmic order that underpinned everything in the universe. Now let's take a closer look at how cats became involved in various ceremonies and customs. We know that the Egyptians were meticulous about their rituals, especially when it came to the afterlife. It was common for people to offer food and other gifts to their gods. But did you know that cats were also included in these offerings? In many temples, small statues of cats were placed beside altars to Bastet, or sometimes actual cats were presented as offerings to the goddess. The belief was that by offering a cat, you were offering a connection to the divine, a way to ensure the goddess's protection and favor. Historians still debate the extent to which these cat offerings were seen as acts of devotion versus the idea that they were also practical measures. After all, the presence of a real cat, even in a temple, would still serve the practical purpose of keeping pests away from sacred texts or food stores. Some scholars argue that these rituals were deeply entwined with the daily needs of Egyptian life. Others suggest that the acts of devotion and the power of the cat's connection to Bastet were the true driving force behind these ceremonies. Regardless, there is no denying that cats played a central role in the spiritual practices of the ancient Egyptians, connecting the everyday and the divine in ways that seem almost magical. Imagine for a moment, you're an Egyptian priest in one of the grand temples of Thebes, where the air smells faintly of incense. There's a soft rustle as a cat silently glides past, its eyes glowing in the dim light. As part of your duties, you prepare an offering for Bastet, placing a small golden statue of a cat beside her altar. The priest next to you whispers prayers for the protection of the pharaoh and the kingdom, and you silently add your own prayer for the prosperity of your family. The cat, completely unaware of the prayers surrounding it, watches quietly from its perch, still and serene. In this moment, the cat is not just an animal. It's a symbol of balance, of divine favor, and of cosmic order. Now, stepping back from the grandeur of temples and royal palaces, we see the cat in yet another light. As a companion to the common Egyptian, cats were highly sought after for their ability to control vermin. But beyond that, they were also seen as sources of comfort and companionship. The ancient Egyptians often depicted themselves with cats in tomb paintings or statues, suggesting that their role wasn't purely functional, but emotional as well. These animals became symbols of love and loyalty, albeit in their own cool, aloof way. Interestingly, cats were also featured in Egyptian art and literature. They were often depicted in tombs, on pottery, and in papyrus scrolls, highlighting their importance in both the spiritual and the daily lives of the Egyptians. Cats in art were sometimes shown alongside their human counterparts, emphasizing the bond between the two. Sometimes they were portrayed in more playful settings, chasing mice or lounging lazily in the sun. Other times, they were shown more solemnly, in scenes of reverence or devotion. In this way, cats became cultural icons, represented in all aspects of life, both everyday and divine. From the sacred rituals to the humble corners of the home, the cat held a unique and powerful place in Egyptian society. Its role was not just about protecting grain stores or chasing mice. It was also about embodying the divine, bringing order to chaos, and serving as a quiet guardian of the soul. Whether in the palace or the farmhouse, the presence of a cat was a reminder of the balance between the mortal and the divine, the seen and the unseen. And in a world that believed so deeply in the spiritual forces that shaped life, the cat stood as a living symbol of the divine order that held everything together. As we continue through this fascinating journey, let's take a step back and reflect on how the ancient Egyptians' devotion to their cats influenced the world outside their borders. We've already seen how cats were woven into the very fabric of Egyptian society, but their influence extended far beyond the walls of Egypt. Picture yourself standing at the bustling docks of Alexandria, watching as merchant ships come and go, their sails billowing in the warm wind. On these ships, not just spices and treasures were being transported. There were also cats, quietly nestled in corners of the cargo holds, embarking on journeys that would span the known world. As Egypt's empire spread, so did its reverence for the sacred cat. Cats found their way into the homes and hearts of people in neighboring civilizations, and their reputation as divine creatures spread throughout the ancient world. They became symbols of good fortune, mystery, and protection, and their image was adopted by various cultures. In fact, it wasn't long before cats became revered in many Mediterranean societies, including ancient Greece and Rome. Historians still argue whether the Greeks were the first to domesticate cats outside of Egypt, or whether the Egyptians shared their sacred animals through their far-reaching trade networks. What is certain, however, is that the Egyptians played a pivotal role in spreading the feline mystique. When you think of the ancient Greeks, what comes to mind? Perhaps their philosophers, their temples, or their gods. But, intriguingly, the Greeks too developed a deep appreciation for the cat. In their society, cats were associated with Artemis, the goddess of hunting and protector of the wild. The Greeks admired the cat's stealth and grace, qualities that they linked to their goddess's own abilities. Artemis herself was often depicted with a hunting cat at her side, highlighting the cat's role as a fierce, graceful, and protective animal. Cats in Greek society were seen not just as companions, but as protectors, guardians of homes, of food, and even of the very spirits of the dead. The Romans, on the other hand, took the reverence for cats to a slightly different level. While they adopted the symbolism of cats as protectors and guardians, they also began to treat them as symbols of luxury and status. Roman homes, particularly those of the wealthy, would often feature cats lounging lazily in sunlit corners, almost as if they were living works of art. Cats became associated with elegance, with calm, and with control, qualities that the Roman elite cherished. The spread of cats through the Mediterranean was not just symbolic, however. Cats brought practical benefits with them, especially in the realm of pest control. As Roman and Greek cities grew, so did their problems with rodents. Grain silos, food storage, and even the great libraries of Alexandria faced infestations of rats and mice. Cats, it seems, were just as valuable in the Roman and Greek world for their skills in hunting and controlling pests as they were for their symbolic role in religious and cultural life. It's fascinating to consider how a simple animal like the cat could have traveled so far from its origins in Egypt to become an international symbol of power, protection, and mystery. Cats became a part of the daily lives of people across cultures, but they also held a mystical, sacred place in religious practices. And through this, they bridged the gap between the mundane and the divine, offering both practical benefits and a deeper spiritual connection. But the cat's journey didn't stop in the Mediterranean. By the time of the Middle Ages, cats had spread throughout much of Europe, often accompanying traders, explorers, and monks on their travels. In some parts of Europe, cats were seen as magical creatures, guardians of the home, protectors of the harvest, and keepers of the secrets of the natural world. In fact, cats were often depicted in medieval artwork as symbols of femininity, fertility, and mystery. Their reputation as mysterious, almost otherworldly creatures only grew stronger as they became more widely recognized across Europe. Imagine then how the mystique of the Egyptian cat, once a symbol of divine protection, had morphed and evolved into something new, something that transcended borders and cultures. From the temples of Egypt to the homes of Greek philosophers and Roman emperors, to the humble cottages of medieval peasants, the cat had taken on a life of its own. It had transcended its role as a simple pet or protector, and had become a symbol of the divine, the mysterious, and the powerful. And though the world around it had changed, one thing remained constant: the cat's quiet presence, its aloof elegance, and its unspoken connection to something far greater than itself. As the cat's influence spread from one culture to the next, we reached the turning point in its history, a shift that would challenge its sacred and revered status. Imagine yourself in a crowded medieval European village, the faint scent of smoke wafting from hearths as villagers move through the narrow cobblestone streets. It's the height of the Middle Ages, a time when superstition and fear dominated much of daily life, and the cat, once a symbol of divine protection, was about to find itself caught in the winds of suspicion and mistrust. In the midst of all this, something unusual began to happen. Cats, once cherished by the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, started to take on a darker, more sinister image in Europe. It wasn't just the normal fears of any animal, it was a collective panic. The rise of Christianity, particularly in its more puritanical forms, contributed to a transformation in the way people viewed cats. No longer were they seen as divine beings, protectors of homes, or symbols of grace. Instead, they became associated with witches, magic, and the devil himself. At this point in history, cats were suspected of being more than just furry companions. In fact, they were believed to be the very familiars of witches, those supernatural beings who could shapeshift and work dark magic. Cats, especially black ones, were thought to be able to see things that humans could not, to move between the realms of the living and the dead. They became infamous for their association with the dark arts, and as a result, they were tragically persecuted. Thousands of cats, particularly in the 14th and 15th centuries, were killed during the European witch hunts. Historians still argue whether the widespread killing of cats during the Middle Ages was purely due to superstition, or whether there were more practical reasons behind it. Some suggest that the mass slaughter of cats was related to the bubonic plague, a devastating epidemic that wiped out a significant portion of Europe's population. Rats, of course, carried the disease, and with fewer cats to hunt them, the rat population grew, inadvertently contributing to the spread of the plague. Others believe that the fear of cats was deeply rooted in religious and cultural shifts that coincided with the rise of the Inquisition, which sought to root out anything considered unclean or devilish. Regardless of the reason, what is certain is that the cat's status in Europe was severely tarnished, and it would take centuries before the animal regained its former standing. This shift in perception of the cat in Europe wasn't just a momentary trend. It was a cultural transformation that resonated throughout the continent. In the eyes of many, the cat went from being a revered guardian of the home to a figure of dread. It became a symbol of everything that was feared and misunderstood during this time: magic, darkness, and death. Imagine, if you will, the fear of a medieval villager peeking out from their window at the sight of a lone black cat slinking through the village. The cat's eyes would glow in the dim light of the lanterns, and in that moment, it might seem to hold more power than any human. And yet, despite the widespread fear and persecution, there were some who still saw the cat in its original divine light. A few scholars, mystics, and even some peasants continued to keep cats in their homes, believing that these creatures still carried protective powers. But for the most part, the world had turned its back on the once sacred animal, and its place in history seemed uncertain. As we reflect on this tragic shift in the cat's fate, it's a stark reminder of how the ebb and flow of cultural and religious beliefs can shape the life of an animal, and even a species. The cat, once revered as a symbol of grace, protection, and divine favor, had become a symbol of fear, superstition, and death in medieval Europe. But the cat's journey was far from over. As we'll see in the next section, it would eventually rise from this dark chapter, reclaiming its rightful place as one of the most beloved and admired animals in the world. As the centuries passed and the Middle Ages drew to a close, something incredible began to happen. The dark chapter in the history of cats slowly started to lift. Imagine, if you will, the scene in a Renaissance-era Italian city, where the streets were lined with new ideas, fresh discoveries, and artistic rebirth. The plague, which had once fueled the cat's fall from grace, had finally begun to subside, and Europe was ready to look at the world and its feline companions in a new light. The Renaissance was a time of rediscovery and renewal, not just in art and science, but also in the way people viewed the world around them. The humanist movement sparked an interest in the classical past, where the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans had treated cats with reverence. Scholars and intellectuals began to look back at the ancient cultures that had once held cats in high esteem, and they began to reclaim the cat's former sacred role. In the cities of Florence and Venice, where the Renaissance was at its peak, cats began to appear once again in artwork and literature, this time not as symbols of superstition, but as companions of intellect and reason. This shift wasn't just limited to the realm of high society. As cities began to grow and trade networks expanded, people from all walks of life started to rediscover the practical benefits of having cats around. No longer feared as harbingers of disease or evil, cats were seen once again as natural pest controllers. As trade and commerce grew in European ports, cats were a common sight on ships and in warehouses, where their skills in keeping rats and mice at bay were once again in high demand. Cats were now appreciated for their utility in protecting food stores, and their presence was no longer seen as a sign of witchcraft, but as a sign of practicality and good sense. Historians still debate how much the Renaissance's revival of classical thought actually influenced this shift in perception, or whether it was a more organic response to the needs of an expanding, more urbanized world. Some argue that it was simply a return to more pragmatic thinking that had, over time, allowed cats to regain their place in society. Others suggest that the Renaissance's focus on individuality and personal experience gave people more freedom to form their own views of animals and nature. Whatever the case, the cat was well on its way to becoming a symbol not just of mystery, but of comfort and companionship. As we move through the next few centuries, we see the cat emerge more and more in the public consciousness, not just as a revered or feared creature, but as a pet, a companion, and even a subject of art. The Romantic period of the 18th and 19th centuries, with its emphasis on emotion and individualism, also embraced the cat as a symbol of freedom and independence. Famous writers like Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Dickens mention cats in their works, often portraying them as intelligent, mysterious, and sometimes aloof creatures that reflected the more complex aspects of human nature. Cats were no longer just creatures that lived alongside us. They became symbols of something deeper, more reflective of our inner selves. Imagine, as you drift off to sleep tonight, that you're in a cozy Victorian-era home, curled up on a plush armchair beside the soft glow of a fire. Perhaps you have a cat by your side, purring gently in the warmth. The world has changed, and so has the role of the cat in human society. From divine protectors to symbols of evil, and finally to cherished companions, cats had been on a journey, and they had weathered the trials of history. By the 20th century, the cat had fully re-established itself as one of the most beloved pets in the world. No longer feared or misunderstood, cats had become fixtures in homes across Europe and North America, their independence and mysterious allure still holding sway over their human companions. The cat had transcended its ancient role as a symbol of divine power and protection, and instead had become an enduring symbol of comfort, mystery, and even a little bit of rebellion. But even as the cat found its place in modern homes and hearts, there remain traces of its sacred past. In some cultures, cats are still revered, still seen as protectors of the home, and still associated with magic and mystery. Imagine walking through the streets of Cairo or Athens, where the legacy of the ancient world still lingers in the air, and you might find people who look at a cat with a reverence that echoes the ancient Egyptians' devotion to these divine creatures. As we look back at the long winding journey of the cat, from its sacred role in Egypt to its fall from grace in medieval Europe and its eventual rise back into our hearts, one thing remains clear: the cat is no ordinary animal. It is a symbol of resilience, mystery, and the ever-changing relationship between humans and the natural world. And as you close your eyes tonight, you might just find yourself drifting off into a peaceful sleep, knowing that somewhere in the world, a cat is resting by its owner's side, quietly keeping watch over the night. As you settle into your thoughts, let's now reflect on the cat's place in modern society. After all, it hasn't always been a smooth journey to becoming the beloved creature it is today. Fast forward to the 19th century, and we encounter the rise of the middle class, particularly in Victorian England, where society was beginning to embrace the notion of domesticated pets in a more formalized way. Cats, once symbols of mystery and superstition, were now seen as members of the family, welcomed into warm hearths and cozy drawing rooms. But this transformation didn't just happen by accident. There was a growing fascination with domesticity during the Victorian era. With the rise of industrialization and urban living, many people began to seek comfort and warmth in their homes, away from the harsh, often grimy realities of city life. The cat, with its independent nature and ability to curl up in the most comfortable of corners, seemed like the perfect companion for this new lifestyle. Of course, the Victorians didn't just see their cats as simple pets. The era was obsessed with categorization, classification, and order. Just as with flowers, animals, and even humans, the Victorians sought to breed and define the ideal cat. The first cat show, held in London in 1871, marked a key moment in the cat's rise to fame. Cats were not only companions, but they were also prized possessions, paraded and judged for their beauty, elegance, and health. Suddenly, a pedigreed cat was something to be admired, and the idea of the fancy cat was born. But as we dive deeper into this shift, there's an interesting detail we can't overlook. While the cat's growing presence in society was generally met with admiration, there were still pockets of resistance. In certain intellectual circles, the cat was still seen as a creature that harbored too much mystery, too much independence. Some saw the cat as a symbol of rebellion against the strictures of Victorian society, the very traits that made the cat so alluring in the first place. For example, the renowned writer Charles Dickens, a cat lover himself, often associated the feline with solitude, individuality, and a rejection of conformity. Cats in Dickens' works frequently symbolize characters who reject social norms or who possess an inner complexity. Now imagine you're walking through the London streets of this time, the gas lamps casting their soft glow over the cobblestone roads. The city is buzzing with the hum of industrial progress, yet within the homes of the Victorian elite, cats are purring contentedly in well-appointed drawing rooms. Perhaps you're sitting in one of those rooms yourself, watching as a cat curls up on a velvet chair, embodying both the comforts of home and the quiet defiance of its ancient ancestors. As you watch the cat, you're reminded that even in this rapidly changing world, something as simple as a creature curled in sleep still carries with it centuries of mystery and symbolism. Historians still debate whether this new cultural appreciation for the cat was a reflection of the shifting ideals of the era, or whether it was more of a reaction against the mechanized, impersonal nature of the industrial age. What is clear, however, is that the Victorian period marked a turning point in the public perception of the cat. No longer just a creature of superstition and fear, it became a symbol of domestic tranquility and a cherished member of the family. And yet, as the cat's journey continued through the 20th century, it would again find itself caught up in a new wave of cultural shifts. After all, the cat has always been a symbol of transformation. Perhaps this adaptability, this ability to exist in both the divine and the everyday, the revered and the feared, is part of what makes the cat so compelling. Even in the modern world, the cat continues to shift and change its role in society. From internet memes to the rise of cat cafes in Asia and beyond, the cat has once again become a symbol not only of comfort, but of digital age humor and culture. As we consider the cat's trajectory through history, from divine companions in Egypt to misunderstood and persecuted creatures in medieval Europe, and finally to the lap of luxury in Victorian homes, it's clear that this small animal has always managed to find a way to adapt, survive, and thrive, no matter the cultural climate. Whether as protectors of the home or internet celebrities, cats have proven time and again that they are much more than just pets. They are symbols of resilience, mystery, and ever-changing cultural narratives. Now, as you ease into your comfortable position, ready to drift off into a peaceful slumber, think back to that ancient Egyptian cat, curled up at the foot of a pharaoh's bed, keeping watch through the night. In some ways, that same cat still lives on in the cats we know and love today. Quiet, observant, and always ready to offer a purring reminder of the sacred bond between humans and animals. The journey of the cat is long, winding, and filled with lessons in resilience. It's a journey that spans centuries, and tonight, as you close your eyes, you're part of it too. Now, as the night deepens and you're surrounded by silence, consider this final stretch of the cat's journey, a journey that we are still living through today. In the modern world, where technology and industry dominate every aspect of life, the humble cat has managed to maintain its place beside us. As the digital age unfolds, the cat has not only maintained its iconic status, but it has thrived in ways that might surprise even the Egyptians who once revered it. Take, for instance, the phenomenon of cat videos. A seemingly harmless hobby has become a global pastime. Cats, those ancient companions of pharaohs, are now stars of the internet, from viral YouTube videos to Instagram accounts boasting millions of followers. People around the world gather virtually to laugh at their antics, marvel at their grace, and share moments of joy. Cats have truly become pop culture icons, revered as much for their elegance as for their ability to bring comfort and amusement in a world that often feels fast and overwhelming. But what is it about these creatures that makes them so universally adored? Perhaps it's the way they balance independence with affection, or how they retain their mysterious aura despite being domesticated. Cats seem to invite admiration from every corner of the world, whether it's the soft meow that melts hearts or the serene purr that soothes restless minds. And then there's their ability to sleep for hours, providing a model for us all to relax, to pause, and to simply be. You might be surprised to learn that, according to studies, spending time with a cat can have profound effects on human well-being. From lowering stress levels to reducing anxiety, cats continue to play an important role in our emotional health. While they no longer serve as protectors against ancient evils or divine emissaries, cats have evolved into silent guardians of our peace of mind. Their presence, as soothing as their purring, continues to ease our worries and accompany us through the more difficult moments of life. Historians and psychologists alike still marvel at how the cat's role has evolved in this modern age. From deities to protectors of homes to quirky internet sensations, cats have adapted to the times while maintaining the essence of what made them so special to ancient civilizations. Yet, perhaps it's their ability to adapt so seamlessly that makes them so captivating. A creature that has lived alongside humanity for thousands of years, in so many different forms, can't help but be a mirror of our own experiences and desires. Just as the Egyptians once believed that cats held the secrets of the divine, today, we turn to them for comfort, companionship, and even laughter. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy, take a moment to think about the cats of your own life. Whether they're curled up beside you, resting in the sun, or simply popping in and out of your world, they continue the legacy of those sacred creatures from ancient Egypt, holding their quiet vigil beside us as we sleep. Whether we're aware of it or not, they are still playing a role in protecting us, if not from evil spirits or disease, then from the anxieties and pressures of the modern world. The cat's timeless presence is a reminder that some things, like comfort and companionship, are truly ageless. So, as you settle deeper into your bed, with the soft hum of the night around you, allow yourself to slip further into the quiet embrace of sleep. The world of the cat, the ancient, mysterious, and ever-adaptable creature, remains with you, a constant companion in the calm of the night. And with that, just like the cats who once lay in the shadows of ancient temples, you can rest easy, knowing you are not alone. As the soft glow of the moon fades into the distance, and you find yourself drifting deeper into the embrace of slumber, there's one final part of the cat's legacy we should touch on. This isn't a part that's often highlighted in history books or viral videos, but it's one of the most profound and quietly significant aspects of the cat's presence in our lives. Cats, for all their mystery and elegance, have often been the quiet, steadfast companions to those navigating personal struggles, whether it be grief, loneliness, or simply the chaos of life. Going back to ancient times, it's clear that cats have held a special place not just as protectors, but as empathetic creatures. The ancient Egyptians, for example, believed that cats had the power to absorb negative energy and bring peace to a household. These sentiments carried through time, from medieval Europe to the Victorian era, where cats were often seen as emotional stabilizers. In homes filled with sorrow, distress, or illness, the quiet presence of a cat could have a calming effect. In today's world, cats continue to serve this emotional role, though perhaps in more subtle ways. You may have seen a friend, a family member, or even yourself find comfort in a cat's presence during a difficult time. Maybe it was the soft nudge of a cat's head against your hand, or the soothing sound of a purring feline nestled beside you that brought you a moment of peace when nothing else could. Psychologists and animal experts have long acknowledged the calming effect of cats on humans. Studies have shown that simply stroking a cat can release oxytocin, the so-called love hormone, and lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. But there's something almost magical about the way cats seem to know when we need them most. Whether it's curling up on your lap after a hard day, or quietly sitting beside you when the world feels overwhelming, cats have a way of being exactly what we need without us even asking. It's a deep, unspoken bond that transcends language or circumstance. Perhaps this is part of what makes cats such enduring figures in human history. Their ability to adapt, to offer comfort in times of need, and to remain elusive enough that they always seem to hold a bit of mystery about them. It's no surprise, then, that cats are often found at the center of our most personal stories. From beloved pets who have witnessed our most intimate moments to the imaginary cats that comforted us as children, the cat has been a constant companion through the stages of our lives. They are the silent observers of our joys and sorrows, the creatures who have seen it all and still seem to remain a step ahead, never revealing too much. Historians and animal behaviorists alike still ponder the depths of this relationship. Why do we connect with cats in this way? What is it about them that makes them such perfect companions? Not just in moments of peace, but during times of personal turmoil. While we may never fully understand why we've formed such a bond with these mysterious creatures, one thing is clear: the cat, with its quiet wisdom and gentle presence, continues to be an integral part of the human experience. Now, as your body begins to relax even more, allowing the soft rhythm of your breath to guide you deeper into slumber, imagine once again that ancient Egyptian scene: the pharaoh, lying in his royal bed, a cat curled at his feet, guarding him from the unknown. Perhaps, in some small way, this cat symbolizes the peace and protection that you, too, are now experiencing. The world outside may be full of noise and chaos, but here, in this moment, with the cat's timeless presence, there is only calm. Let the quiet hum of the night and the rhythmic purring of an imaginary cat guide you into deeper relaxation. The same bond that once connected humans and cats thousands of years ago is still with us today. And now, as you drift further into the embrace of sleep, let the sense of peace that cats have provided throughout history fill your heart. With each gentle breath, allow yourself to relax even more, knowing that the world will carry on. But for now, you are exactly where you need to be. As the final layers of your consciousness drift toward a calm, restful place, let's take one last moment to honor the cat's enduring presence in both our history and our hearts. Here, at the end of our journey, it's fitting to reflect on what has made these creatures not only symbols of protection and comfort, but also companions for generations. The ancient Egyptians, the Victorians, and even the digital age have all shared one thing in common: a fascination with the cat's quiet majesty, its mysterious demeanor, and its ability to transcend the ages. Throughout the millennia, the cat has gone from a guardian deity to an adored household companion, its role always evolving, but never losing the essence that made it sacred in the first place. In every culture, from the sands of Egypt to the bustling cities of the modern world, cats have maintained their place beside us, often curled up in the softest of spots, simply being. And now, as the day winds down to a close and the world quiets around you, think about this. There is something uniquely comforting about the cat's simplicity. In a world that is constantly changing, the cat remains a symbol of stability and peace. Its mere presence, whether in an ancient temple or your own living room, has the power to calm the mind and soothe the soul. There's no need for grand gestures or loud displays. The cat's purr, its quiet watchfulness, reminds us that sometimes the most profound comfort can come from the smallest, most unassuming sources. Historians still debate the depth of the cat's connection with humans, whether it's the result of centuries of symbiosis or an entirely unique bond that cannot be easily defined. But what is undeniable is that cats continue to captivate us, provide for us, and quietly walk alongside us in every chapter of our lives. As you close your eyes, remember that you are part of a much larger story. Your connection with the cat is one that spans history, culture, and time itself. From the divine realms of Egypt to the present day, where cats are still curled on our laps, ready to offer companionship in the quiet of the night, their journey mirrors our own. It's a journey of resilience, of companionship, of quiet strength, and perhaps most importantly, of unconditional love. Now let the sounds of the world grow softer and allow the peace of this journey to settle over you like a warm, comforting blanket. With each breath, sink deeper into the embrace of sleep, knowing that just as the pharaohs once trusted in the quiet vigilance of their feline companions, so too can you trust in the soothing comfort of your own slumber. The cat, a creature that has stood the test of time, continues to watch over you, even now as you rest.